Welcome to the RTD Sports Podcast. This is episode 4. I'm Matthew Kiewit. I'm joined as always by Zach Joachim. We got a fun show for you. We are in the dead of summer here. Luckily, we got World Cup keeping us afloat and a few other announcements by way of Virginia sports and local Richmond sports, and then we'll touch on some more national topics as well. Zach, how we feeling?
Yeah, it's certainly the dead period of the sports calendar. My birthday's July 9th. It's coming up here. I'm going out on vacation starting next week. I love this time of year, just from a outdoor recreation standpoint. I think a lot of people do. It is tough content-wise with sports. We were talking about the budget earlier today, our print sports budget for tomorrow, and it was quite sparse. Because our dear colleagues John O'Connor and Savannah Rieger are both out on vacation this week, and myself and our intern Audrey Pachuta are working hard on getting spring all Metro teams finished, which is obviously not a daily. And so we were grasping for content a little bit. There'll be plenty of stuff in tomorrow's RTD sports section, but it is certainly that time of year where we're trying to figure out how to fill the paper out and working on project stuff, but also want to tell each other to take time away and use this time of year to decompress a little bit. And we hope everyone out there is doing the same as we approach the 4th of July here.
Yes, it's going to be a very hot 4th, but the 4th will be here nonetheless.
My friends Ryan and Julia are moving on Friday, and I'm helping them move in the morning. Yeah, I'm very nervous. I mean, as someone who was working for a moving company for a few summers during college and spent a night in the hospital, actually, that's a whole story that we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. But long story short, I was severely dehydrated and cramping terribly, and they had to put me on like a saline IV because I was doing multiple moves and not getting enough electrolytes and food when it was 90 plus degrees outside. So everyone hydrate out there. Be safe. It's going to be 100 degrees on Friday, and we'll be moving in it. So we might have some stories about that day down the road.
An extra banana or two. We'll go through the top stories on Richmond.com. Zach, some drama on the VCU front. Here, NC State may or may not be ducking some smoke.
My sign fell down. I'm sorry for that disturbance. It scared my dog a great deal. Yeah, so ducking smoke was the terminology used here. I talked to Phil Martelli on Friday. He's obviously not happy. VCU's obviously not happy. NC State has bought out the return game of its home and home series with VCU for $190,000, which is in the contract. It was originally scheduled by Will Wade and Ed McLaughlin when Will Wade got the NC State job. Obviously, Will Wade has since left for LSU. That's a whole nother conversation about the roster they're building down there in Baton Rouge and eligibility. But VCU lost at NC State in Raleigh in the first game of that series this past year. 85-79 was a good game. That result really helped NC State get into the NCAA tournament as an at-large bid. Like, I think they were pretty close to the bubble, and it's feasible that they might not have made it had they not had that win. And everyone was really excited originally for Will Wade to be coming back to the Siegel Center, because when he did that originally with LSU after he left on his contractually obligated home and home, that was one of the best Siegel Center atmospheres I've ever seen. It was phenomenal that night. And it's so rare that VCU gets power conference opponents to come into the Siegel Center. It's mostly based on these home and home series that they have with teams of former coaches, because they put that in every coach's contract. But Mike Rhodes and Penn State bought it out. I think there's certainly growing trepidation within the VCU camp that UVA intends to buy it out. The contractually obligated home and home in Ryan Odom's contract. UVA hasn't officially done that yet. You get 3 years as a time window after the coach leaves to schedule those games. And so UVA has one more year. But the expectation is that they intend to buy those out. And then NC State, Justin Gainey is their first year coach. Phil said that they talked this past week. Look, there was a lot of placating, I think, from Justin Gainey's part. And I did not hear that conversation firsthand. I'm only relaying what Phil Martelli told me about it. There were a lot of very passionate NC State fans in the comments on Twitter on that story. So if you saw all of that discourse then you know what I'm talking about. It was obviously very contentious. My good friend Noah Fleischman, who's a VCU alum, a great reporter, also had a story on it last week, and there were a lot of VCU fans being kind of mean to Noah in the comments too. So I
Be
just
nice
remind
to
everyone,
know.
be nice to Noah. Don't shoot the messengers here. We're just trying to share the news. No, I did not hear the conversation between Martelli and Gainey firsthand because it was a private conversation. I'm relaying what Phil told me about it. He said that there was a lot of, oh, you guys are too good. It's too tough of an environment. I'm a first year coach, reconstructed roster. That game doesn't make sense for us right now. To me, and this is conjecture, this is my opinion, these are not Phil's words. It sounds like I think that there is a top down order among the power conferences to not play these games for the most part. I think this is what, at the end of the day, that's what this is about. It's about consolidation of NCAA tournament bids to the power conferences. Whether you're the Big 12, the Big East, the Big 10, or the ACC, I think that there are voices in the hierarchies of those conferences who are telling an NC State, don't go play VCU at the Siegel Center. Don't go play Santa Clara. Don't go play other strong mid-majors who are going to be battling it out on the bubble. And I think with expansion of the NCAA tournament to 76 teams, this framework changes a little bit. I think a lot of people would hope that that results in kind of the democratization of NCAA bids, and the fear is that that's not going to be the case, is that by expanding, what you're really opening the door for is, Auburn being a good example last year, right? A team that was 500 or below 500 in power conference play to be able to get into the NCAA tournament. Phil stressed that NC State scheduling North Carolina had nothing to do with them buying out VCU. I know there were a lot of people on social media kind of assuming that that was the case because of the timing here. The dates didn't line up. It wasn't one or the other. That's not what this is. But you obviously see them scheduling a neutral site game against UNC and buying out at VCU. Financial help is obviously part of that because they can make a lot of money playing at a neutral site game in North Carolina against UNC. And $190,000 might sound like a lot of money on surface level, but for programs of this caliber, it's really not. It didn't hurt them very much to buy out the game. So it's frustrating from a VCU perspective because it's so difficult to get marquee non-conference opponents to come into the Siegel Center. Phil talked about how difficult it is trying to put together a non-conference schedule, and he wants to play as many tough teams as you can. And I know they're working on a neutral site game against a power conference opponent right now. They'll obviously have a great field in Maui. So much hinges on those MTEs and getting good opponents there. But certainly frustrating for VCU when it feels like, you went on the road, played them in their place, held up your end of the bargain. And then when it, the tables turn and it's time for them to make the trip up to Richmond, they don't want to do it. And for VCU fans want to be able to go to the Siegel Center and see a resume building opportunity at home. And those are so few and far between. That's why there was a lot of frustration when they lost the New Mexico game last year, because that was kind of the big fish that they were bringing into the Siegel Center in the non-conference to play. But I know they're working hard to try and fill that void in the schedule, and Phil wants to play as difficult of a non-conference schedule as you can. And it's frustrating from a VCU perspective. But they're still working on filling out the rest of the non-conference schedule. And obviously NC State's not going to be coming to the Siegel Center. Matt, what was your initial reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, and to be clear, we are not aware of these conversations happening, but it's just another part of the growing trend of power conferences ducking mid-majors. Not always because they're, afraid of the competition, which seems to have played a part in this instance, but it's just over the last 3 years, power conferences are just not scheduling mid majors, and again, we are not aware of some behind the scenes conspiracy, but given that they are all in lockstep on this, it seems that maybe there's a group text on the side here, and people are doling out orders.
And here's what Martelli said of that conversation with Gainey. He said, Gainey eventually just said to me, I don't want to have to come there. It's too tough of a place to play. You guys are too good. He's got to do what's right for his program. I've got to do what's right for mine. One of the things I'll always do is I'll be honest, and that was an honest conversation between the two of them. I think there was a lot of the words hemming and hawing were used on the NC State end in terms of communication on this front. VCU proposed a variety of dates and scenarios to try and play the game, including pushing it back to 2027. They said that they were open to, but not between Martelli and Gainey, but between the staffs and administration. A lot of text, emails, and phone calls went unanswered, and it increasingly became apparent to VCU that they weren't going to play this game.
And who was it that said they were being honest?
Martelli said that it was an
Okay.
honest conversation between the two of them.
Okay. I was
And
gonna say if it was NC State saying, making it a point to say I'll always be honest with you. That I was gonna say that sounds like something a liar would say.
no, Phil. I think felt like Gainey was being honest with him.
Okay.
Is what he was saying.
Okay.
And here's what else he had to say. It does frustrate me at times, though, when it makes sense. Why wouldn't this game be played? That does frustrate me. Quite honestly, there's certain times where, as our guys would say, and Coach Chris Cole, who's an assistant, would say, it's people just ducking smoke. I'm not saying any specifics, but there's some people that are ducking smoke. We don't duck smoke. Other people will clearly duck smoke. So that became the buzz term kind of for the story here. And yeah, I mean, if you lose at the Siegel Center, that doesn't tank your resume at all if you're NC State, right? And that's a huge quad one opportunity. Like that would have been a really good game for them in terms of trying to get into the NCAA tournament. And so that's why you look at it from service level. And again, like you stressed, we're not firsthand aware of any conversations among the ACC hierarchy, any of the power conference hierarchies. But when you talk around the college
Working
basketball
theory.
world,
Yeah.
everyone operates under the understanding that the power conferences are doing what they can to consolidate NCAA bids, and to not play mid majors.
We'll see how this shakes out. And yeah, we'll see who VCU is able to schedule at the Siegel Center for their big non-conference opponent. And we'll pivot here. A couple of announcements. Head to richmond.com to read all of Zach's reporting on VCU and all of our reporting on Richmond sports and Virginia sports, and then the national sports will make its way on there too. Locally, we've got our all Metro teams from the spring sports season coming up. We're going to roll out the first couple online at richmond.com this week, and they'll be in print over the weekend. And it's one of the more grueling tasks that we do as a sports department, but I'd say, it's worth it in the end. Don't you think, Zach?
Certainly. We obviously want to make sure that all of the area athletes who deserve recognition get said recognition. It seems like from a local perspective, there's a lot of politicking that goes on in the all-region voting and the all-state voting, whether that's VISAA or the VHSL classifications. We hear that from coaches a lot, and I would like to think that they all really value the all-metro teams because it encompasses the entire area locally, right? When it's whether it be a state classification in the VHSL or different classifications in the VISAA, it's throughout the whole state. And it's not just tied to the Richmond area. And all Metro, I've heard coaches tell players this before, that's kind of the biggest in terms of all of the accolades because it's private schools, it's public schools. It's all 50 plus, schools that we have in the area. And you're trying to pick the best athletes out of them. And it is really difficult because a lot of the time you don't have head-to-head competition. You have pretty significant gulfs in competitive level. Like it can be really hard to, this is not a knock on any classification or program, but it's hard to compare a class 2 VHSL school to a VISAA Division 1 school or a class 6 school to a class 3 school. You play in different playoff brackets and have different state tournaments and everything. And so we're trying to talk to as many coaches as we can, and get all the nominations in and evaluate best we can. Me and our intern Audrey were talking back and forth today about the All Metro Boys and Girls Soccer Players of the Year. There's a really difficult call on the Girls Soccer Player of the Year. There's a few really good candidates, and you're kind of splitting hairs between them. So we're proud of those teams. It's obviously been an institution at the Times-Dispatch for a long time. And yeah, we'll start rolling them out this weekend.
Yeah, I remember when the Washington Post, canned their sports department. That was one of the main things folks lamented was no more all Met. Yeah, I still hear some, the tail end of an argument that started in 2024 over the All Metro Girls Softball Player of the Year. There's still to this day some back and forth between RTD sports employees who will remain nameless.
Oh, it's me and Savannah. It's okay. We can throw that out in the open. That was and that was a really difficult call too. It was, and we have a couple of those this year. And I think that was one of those examples too, where you were comparing players in very different classifications. One of whom had won a state title, and led their team to a state championship. One of whom was like a high caliber recruit who didn't win a state title but was an incredibly talented player. And so those are very difficult comparisons to make sometimes. And a lot of the time, like, you can talk to coaches as much as you want, but coaches, understandably, are always going to give you their frame of reference, right? If it's a private school coach, then they're probably going to favor the private school players. If it's a Class 2 coach in the VHSL, then they're going to favor the players that they saw and the teams they played against. And, understandable from everyone's perspective. And it makes it difficult, too, especially when you're, we only have a couple high school reporters at this point. We're trying to get around to different sports and see as many as we can, but you can only see so many.
You can't be with these kids day in and day out like they're coaches.
No. So that process is difficult, and we appreciate immensely any coach who's going to advocate for their players because we need all of that insight from coaches. So thank you. If you're a coach who sent in an All-Metro nomination, I'll shout out Jay Wood at St. Christopher's Soccer. They won a state championship this year, and his All-Metro nominations are exemplary. I mean, it's just pages of really, really detailed information. You can tell that he cares so much about his players, and that really helps us in the decision-making process. So there is no such thing as too much information for All-Metro nominations. Send us everything you want us to know about your players, and it is immensely appreciated.
Much like raising a child, an All-Metro team takes a village.
Well said.
Sticking with the high school sports scene, we are going to have our second annual 804 Football Media Day. It's going to be on, you guessed it, 804 again. That's August 4th. Look, coaches, if you're seeing this, you can look for an official announcement hitting your inboxes probably Tuesday or Wednesday. And if you're hearing this, if you're seeing this and you didn't get an official invite, consider this your official invite. We're trying to get as many coaches and players in our coverage area in the door as possible. So if you don't get something from us and you feel left out, honestly, don't feel like you're overstepping to say, hey, I didn't get an invite. We want to invite everyone. So if we didn't get the invite to you, we want to do that. So if you hear about it from another coach or you're seeing this, please reach out. You can get me at mkiewiet@timesdispatch.com, RTD Sports Podcast at timesdispatch.com, ZJOACHIM at timesdispatch.com for Zach. Just, get in touch with us any way you can if you for some reason didn't get an invite. But yeah, August 4th, we are going to have our second annual high school football media day, and we're very excited to do so.
We got some really good feedback from last year. That was an incredibly useful event for us. In years past, we'd be driving around to all the different practices over a matter of weeks leading up to the season. And it's super helpful for us to have everyone in one place to be able to talk to as many players and coaches as possible. And I think, Matt, one of the things that I really enjoyed from that last year is how coaches praised it as good media training, for players. Like, so many of these kids haven't had the experience of being at a podium before, and facing questions from reporters in that setting where you've got other players and coaches watching and listening. And I think that's a wonderful opportunity. I hope it's helpful to the kids and to the coaches, because obviously when you're preparing for the college level, that's so important to so many young players these days. Understandably so, everyone wants to go play in college, and media training is a big part of that. I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's true for any level of college athletics. Pretty much, you're going to get some sort of media training.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is, but you get this thing in front of someone's face, and it changes things. I don't know what. When we started doing this podcast, I could barely get through two sentences without saying, and I'm still trying to work through it. It's something about having a microphone in front of your face. You can't find the words all of a sudden. I don't understand it, but yeah, it helps the kids get some media training, and it's just fun getting everyone together. We get some, last year we had Raising Canes, and those kids could eat. Let me tell you, I thought we'd have plenty of leftovers. I think the leftovers were polished off within a day. We did not have many leftovers at all.
I was gonna say, by the time it got to like me and Savannah, and I think Danny Lewis from Virginia Preps like stuck around too, we had some leftovers to get through, but they were pretty much gone by the end of that day. And we're still working on sponsorship setup and everything for that day. There will be food. We can promise you that.
Food.
There will be food.
I will cancel the whole thing if there's no food. I promise.
We're gonna mix up the format a little bit too, relative to last year, and just how things flowed, trying to make sure that our teams and our players aren't sitting for too long waiting for everyone else to finish. We're gonna get everyone cycled in and out that day and try and give everyone a chance to have their say.
So there's a press release that's also going to go out to local media, and there'll be an announcement hitting coaches' inboxes in the next couple days here once we nail down the times. And there'll be a story on richmond.com. We are going to hopefully make it so you cannot miss this announcement if you're a high school football coach. And I think that takes care of sports at the local level here. Zach, unless you had anything that we need to touch on.
Did a story on Josh Gentry taking over the Hanover baseball program.
You mentioned that right before we hopped on. Yeah,
that's okay. Late last week too. Super excited for Josh. Super excited for everyone over there. Josh was at Godwin for 11 seasons, 5 as the head coach. He was an assistant under John Fletcher previously. He's one of my favorite coaches that I've enjoyed interviewing over the years. His Godwin team walked off my alma mater, Maury, in the state semifinals a couple years ago, so that was fun. And we had some
great headline by our copy editor Vince. I remember.
What was that? Do you remember that?
Walk-off act of Godwin.
Oh, I forget. That was a good one, wasn't it? Yeah, Vince, our headline writer extraordinaire on the copy desk. But that was Luke Smyers, I think, that hit that walker, who's at Alabama now. But Josh Gentry his dad was having some health complications. He's got 3 kids, wanted to spend time with the family, did so over the past year, obviously missed the dugout. As we talk, we hear from a lot of coaches, regardless of the sport, who want to take some time away to spend more time with their family. It's so incredibly intensive. But you get that itch really quickly. And Josh certainly did. But he lives in the Hanover community, and that was the biggest thing for him. They live like 5 minutes from the school. His wife has taught in the area for a long time. He's going to be teaching at Oak Knoll, which is the middle school there, and one of his kids is in middle school, so he's going to be able to see them on a regular basis. His dad's doing much better now. Will be reassuming his customary seat right next to the dugout, which was cool to hear Josh talk about. And he hears, in the community, wanting to get Hanover baseball back to the place that it was at before. State title winning program. They went 12-8. They missed out on the playoffs last year. Have obviously had coaching turnover here in the last couple of years. And Josh is excited to try and get them back to a standard of elite excellence that program was at for a long time and is known for winning state championships.
Yeah, the community, like you said, very passionate about their baseball. We write anything about any baseball team located in Hanover County, and that's one of the most read stories of the week. Almost you can set your watch to it.
Yeah, I grew up obviously in the 757, and I told Josh this when we talked last week. We would have good seasons in high school, whether it be at Maury or Granby or Kellam, and Virginia Beach always had a really good program, Kempsville as well. We all struggled to get past the Chesapeake schools because that's just the hotbed of talent. David Wright, Justin B.J. Upton, Michael Kadire are all guys who played professionally and are names people will know who came out of the Chesapeake area. We couldn't get past Great Bridge and Hickory. And I covered that this year in the state tournament, right? James River and Glen Allen had phenomenal seasons. They both ran into a outstanding Great Bridge team, which ended up winning a Class 5 state title. And I think of Hanover County as the as the Chesapeake of the Richmond area, just in terms of the talent that it produces in baseball. Yeah, it's kind of like the final boss locality. Well said, of baseball talent in the area. So, Atlee, Hanover, Mechanicsville, always outstanding. Austin Morris,
Patrick Henry had a great
yeah,
start last season.
has done some really good stuff at Patrick Henry baseball. He's the son of Atlee coach Mike Morris. Josh knows Tyler. Josh used to play with Tyler Johnson, the Mechanicsville coach, and knows Mike and Austin Morris really well. So some cool connections among the head coaches in the county there. Excited to see what Josh does with that program with all the talents in the Hanover area.
Indeed. We'll shift gears here. You may have heard the World Cup is still going on. Zach, we have a bracket in the middle of, well, it's not the middle. In late June, we are holding a bracket. It is beautiful.
It is, isn't it? And I'm going to pull up the full bracket right now. I will tell you from today, we got a couple of headlines already from today. First of all, Germany and Paraguay are in first half stoppage time right now. Paraguay is up 1-0 on Germany, which would be a massive upset. Now, we had something similar. Do I know something?
The Kiwis have World Cup fever, I think.
Do they? It's happened.
It's happened.
I'm proud.
What was our first? Yeah, the first game we watched was Congo and Uzbekistan, which I have some thoughts on things that happened in that game, but that was very exciting. Congo gets to the knockout round for the first time ever, I believe. And the next day, we watched the first knockout round game, Canada and South Africa. Very exciting. Canada was finally able to break through
at the death.
Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then my wife texted me about 1:00 this afternoon. She's still down in Raleigh with family visiting. Her twin brother. Our sister-in-law Bruna, my wife's brother's wife, was born in Brazil. So they went to a restaurant or a bar and grill or something to watch the Brazil-Japan game, and they were treated to a very good game.
Yeah, they were. Gabriel Martinelli, stoppage time winner. Gabriel Martinelli is an Arsenal player, so I know him very well. And they were trailing 1-0, I believe, at halftime, and then turned that result around in the second half. Obviously, phenomenal soccer culture in Brazil, one of the best soccer countries in the world. I believe they've won the World Cup 5 times, and that's the most in history. Somebody check me on that. It's like 4 or 5 times. I know they lead all nations in World Cup titles. So we've gotten some incredible knockout stage games already here. And with expansion of the World Cup this year, like you were always going to get a couple of Congo and Cabo Verde stories this year with some very small countries who'd never advanced to the knockout round before getting there. And that's been awesome to watch. Like the Cabo Verde Spain 0-0 has been like one of the best games of the tournament, and nobody scored a goal. So some super cool underdog Cinderella stories in the World Cup. And now that you've got like a bracket that's that big in the round of 32, it feels a little bit like March Madness, doesn't it? Like it's taken on that vibe, which is awesome.
How early do you think I need to get to Gus's on Wednesday for the U.S.?
Oh, you probably need to reserve a table in order to get a table.
Wife is still out of town, so it'll just be me.
Okay. Well, if you want to join forces, I've been trying to. Maggie and I have been putting together a group of our mutual friends to try and go watch Wednesday night. We weren't sure where we were gonna go. We were gonna try and go to like West Cary Sports Bar is by her place up in the Fan, and it's new. So we were hoping maybe it didn't have that much of a following yet, because anywhere like Gus's, Penny Lane, you're gonna have to get there hours early.
Shoulder to shoulder.
I think. Yeah, it's gonna be. But it'll be phenomenal atmospheres. So if you want to put in the work to get there early at those places, and for just one person, you'd probably be good, because like you can find standing room, by the bar or something like that. But if you want a table at a place like Gus's or Penny, I think you're gonna have to reserve it or get there hours early, because it's gonna be bonkers for that game on Wednesday.
Fair enough. Well, it sounds like everybody's got World Cup fever, but add me to the list. I have a question.
Yeah.
So we're watching Congo Uzbekistan. And Congo, we think, ties it up 1-1. I believe in the early second half, maybe late first half. I can't remember. But then they go to video review. I'm watching it on Telemundo, mind you, so I don't really know what they're saying.
I've been watching everything on Telemundo because
Yeah,
that's what's available on Peacock. And
yeah,
I'm with
yeah.
you. It can be confusing sometimes because I do not speak Spanish, but the vibes of the announcers are immaculate.
Vibes are great. But yeah, so they're reviewing this play. The fella from the Congo, like, created some space between him and the defender. It seemed like at least 10 to 15 seconds before the goal. I don't even, it wasn't really even in the scoring play, but I guess it was. And they wiped the goal off the board saying, foul on number so and so. And I don't watch a ton of soccer. That was quite honestly the first soccer game I've watched since the last World Cup, probably. And so, maybe this is old hat to some, FIFA heads, but I was flabbergasted that it's something that happened so far removed from the goal caused a goal to be called back.
I admittedly haven't seen it. I just looked it up. I know that I think it was late in that game too. There was a very contentious offside call. That might have been Iran and Egypt too earlier. There's been a few very
In the
high
Pride game,
profile. Yeah, yeah, which was a whole I know that was in
it's a
Seattle
whole
and,
other
and
thing.
that was a whole other thing. But VAR has certainly been an enormous topic of conversation in international soccer and club soccer for a few years now, and relitigating instances like that. And yes, you're touching on one of the central narratives of it, which is how far back can we relitigate, right? Like in a passage of play that leads to a goal, can we go back 30 seconds and say this was a foul? The general rule is if it directly leads to the goal, then you can relitigate it. And so I'd want to look at a replay of it.
I could,
If it's
yeah,
15
I could see
seconds or
that. I could
so.
see that being the argument because it was the primary defender on the. I can't remember if that guy shot it or passed it to the guy who scored. I think it was the guy who passed it to the guy who then scored. But you know, what was I going to say? It happened so far before the goal. I was just stunned, and it did not help that Uzbekistan seemed to be flopping quite a bit, and the referees seemed to be falling for it every time. So that
Maggie,
kind of
whenever she watches soccer with me, that's the first thing she says too. Is why is there so much flopping? It seems like they're all looking for fouls all the time, and so I
well,
totally understand that.
I
That's a
blame the
problem in
refs because they
basketball
fall
too.
for it. Yeah,
Yeah,
stop
because they fall
falling
for
for
it.
it.
I know.
They'll
I
stop
know.
doing it if you don't fall for it.
I would say to American sports fans, it's just as much a problem in basketball these
No
days,
doubt.
especially in the NBA, right? We talk about foul baiting all the time and the
Another
Thunder
sport I
and,
have not watched since the last World Cup.
and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and everything. So I am a huge proponent of calling simulation, and it is a rule in soccer, and I believe it's a rule in basketball too, but it's so rarely called. You can call technical fouls or you can yellow card players for flopping, and it's in the rule book, but it's not called anywhere near enough. I want them to be so much stricter about that than they are. About if you identify someone looking for a call when there's not contact, that needs to be a yellow card, or that needs to be a technical foul in basketball.
Yeah, I'd rather
And I
have them
want,
make mistakes the other way. But
yeah, yeah, same. I'm looking at replays right now, trying to see where the foul call is. And the goal, it looks like, took a big deflection and ended up going in, right? Was it an elbow to the face that I think
is
they
it
ended up calling?
a hand to the face?
A hand to the face, okay. And I think that's part of it too, is the rationale. Yeah, okay, I see it now. That's tough. Because I don't think there's really intent there. But they've obviously tried to, and this is true for a lot of sports, right? Contact to the
Yeah,
head. Everyone is
yeah,
very
yeah.
conscientious of concussions these days, and so any kind of contact to the head, there's a little extra length to be able to relitigate it and go back for a review. I think that it looks to me like in his running motion, it's just kind of a natural like arm out, but he does make contact to his face. And I believe it's the player that scored the goal, right, is the one that made contact. So
Yeah, well, okay, yeah. I couldn't remember if it was the guy who scored or the guy who passed it to the guy who scored.
I'm sorry for the pause, everyone. I'm looking back at the review right now.
Live
Yeah,
review.
yeah, it's a live review and a disallowed goal. Ah, I do see it. That is a difficult one. Um, I don't know what to tell you. The VAR has certainly been a huge topic of discussion, and people saying that we have, over litigated relative to, automatic ball strike and what you wrote about earlier this year, right? Is I think everyone's trying to figure out what that line is and how much we want technology involved in the game because we want to get all the calls right. But there's also everyone recognizes that there's a line there. And when you go over it, you're really taking away from the competitive flow and the human element of the game when everything is just officiated through video replay.
No doubt. Yeah, and the right team ended up winning anyway. Congo ended up winning, so ended up not mattering too much. That's something that just stunned me. What have you seen from the perspective of somebody who actually watches this sport pretty regularly? What are you excited to watch this week?
Generally, in the World Cup, the Netherlands and Morocco should be an outstanding game later tonight at 9 p.m. So I'm excited for that one. I mean, from a holistic perspective, I think it looks like France and everybody else. I think I saw people, making comparisons between them and like U.S. men's national basketball teams in the past with what looks like the level of dominance. On paper, they should win this World Cup. They are the best team. They've looked pretty unstoppable. Ousmane Dembele had a hat trick the other day, and I think the first 35, 40 minutes of that match, Michael Olise has been incredibly in form over the past year for Bayern Munich. And between Olise, Kylian Mbappe, and Ousmane Dembele, that front line is ridiculous right now. And I think we had Paul talking about this on the podcast the other week. Like France could run out 3 separate teams capable of winning this tournament. Like that's the level of depth that they have. And I do think that in terms of a tier and a favorite to win this competition, it's them and everybody else right now. England has been a little.
We need a Goliath to slay. It'll make it
We
a little
do.
more exciting if they are to lose.
And Argentina, there are certainly some teams who, you see them head to head could certainly be capable of it. Messi has looked like prime Messi still for Argentina. And they're obviously the holders right now and totally capable. Brazil also has a comparable level of depth to France. Probably not their first 11. I think people would agree is not as good as France's right now, but that's obviously an incredibly soccer-rich country who's fully capable of winning this tournament. The U.S. ended up getting not as favorable of a draw as we thought they would. And we talked about that the other week. That's probably worth mentioning. I think they're lined up they would see the winner of Belgium or Senegal in the round of 16 should they advance past Bosnia. And that's by no means a gimme against Bosnia. The U.S. will be favored in that game. But then if you were to see Belgium or Senegal in the next round, then that is a very difficult game and 2 teams fully capable of beating the U.S. Portugal hasn't looked as impressive as people expected them to, nor has Spain, really. I think both of those teams have been somewhat disappointing. So for me, I think right now, the question would be, can England, Argentina, or Brazil beat France? And probably Germany deserves to be in that conversation right now. I didn't say them because they're down 1-0 to Paraguay right now at halftime. So they've got to worry about getting to the round of 16. The Netherlands could probably be in that conversation too. I think those are all those teams in that second tier that everyone would look at as can someone come out of that group and knock off France, which looks like a machine right now.
Is Ronaldo washed?
Yes, he is.
Ronaldo
And
is washed.
Ronaldo is washed, and the problem too is that at this juncture of Ronaldo's career, like he has always been a pure goal scorer who is not someone who has a great work rate off the ball, who's not someone who drops deeper to get involved in link-up play. Like, he doesn't do all of the other little things. And he never really has. He's just been the best goal scorer in the world, and so you put him out there. But he doesn't do all of the little things to contribute when he's not scoring goals. And so all of a sudden, when he's not scoring goals, then he's just kind of a lifeless body up there. And also, big criticism of Ronaldo over the years. He showed this with Real Madrid sometimes. Like, he wants to score. And he very much is one of those athletes that, like, it comes across as he doesn't just want to win, he wants to be the reason his team wins. And when you're not in your prime production anymore, you're not scoring goals like he used to, it seems like kind of, I hate to use the word, but almost like cancerous, influence on what is otherwise an incredibly talented Portugal team that has a bunch of world class players. But it kind of feels like he's a weight that's dragging them down right now, as opposed to Messi, who has aged like fine wine, right, and who still looks like he's ready to to potentially lead this Argentina team to the last four and maybe give France a run for their money.
Indeed. Speaking of washed, Phil Mickelson, maybe a bad guy. We don't have to spend too much time on this, but maybe we won't spend much time on it at all. But want to acknowledge it. It is quite a trending story nationally. We have the exclusive Golf Digest article that came out with the initial allegations from the I believe it was a female clubhouse attendant at a golf club. And since then, there's been all kinds of weird accusations about Phil. So maybe him and Tiger, deserve one another. Again, also, Tiger never had, misconduct allegations. He was just kind of a psycho.
We obviously have the news segments of the podcast and some elements like that are or stories like that are in the sports conversation world that's important to touch on. Brendan Sorsby, another one of them, right? That not exactly in the same vein, but the NFL is skipping the supplemental draft this year, and he might be going to the UFL. It looks like this is the quarterback.
As predicted on the RTD Sports Podcast episode.
Well done,
1, I believe.
You were ahead of the curve there on that one.
Yeah.
So he was betting on games. He's a Texas Tech quarterback, right? Am I remembering that right? Was it A&M?
He was Cincinnati, and then Texas Tech got him in the transfer portal and was going to pay him a boatload of money. He was like one of the most, if not the most sought after transfer portal quarterbacks. And then Texas Tech scooped him up. They thought that was the last piece they needed to have a run at a national championship. And watching that Oregon game last year in the CFP, I think they were right. They just needed a quarterback. Although Oregon's defense is nasty, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. Sorsby surely would have made them better, assuming he was not gambling on their games. But we'll never know, it seems. Yeah, so NCAA told him to get lost. So he says, okay, I'll enter the supplemental draft for the NFL. Those who don't know the supplemental draft, essentially, I forget who made this analogy, but it's a good one. It's like a silent auction, if you will, where teams are bidding. They're kind of secretly or silently bidding in this case, it would be their 2027 draft picks. So if you think Sorsby is worth a third, maybe to ensure that you get him, you bid a second. And if you win with that bid, you give up your second round pick in 2027. That draft was made for people like Terrell Pryor, if you remember his situation when he got kicked out of Ohio State for accepting free tattoos, I believe after they won a natty, or they had a really good season and he got some free tattoos. And that was like the biggest scandal of all time at the time. And he got kicked out of school, and so he had to go into the supplemental draft. He was not eligible to enter the NFL draft. And so that's why the supplemental draft exists. And so the NFL told him, we're not going to have a supplemental draft this year because it was only going to be Sorsby in that draft. So NFL says no supplemental draft this year. Go play somewhere else. Canada tells him not here. But looks like the UFL is open to him. This from Red Raiders Wire on USA Today Network. They're quoting UFL co-owner Mike Rapoli posted on X. The UFL is the League of Opportunity. We created our regional player initiative to keep great players closer to home, closer to their fans, and on the field. Have your people call my people with 6 exclamation points. So seems like they want him. They can have him.
They want someone who's going to draw headlines, right? And obviously, if Brendan Sorsby is playing in the UFL, then people are going to tune into some of those games next year, and it'll be a topic of conversation. It was funny because I'm in a dynasty fantasy football league, and we touched on that before we started the episode here. We'll have some fantasy football content heading into this upcoming NFL season because we both love fantasy football and play in a few different leagues. But everyone was trying to figure out, what do you do with Brendan Sorsby? Do you put him in your rookie draft this year? Do you hold kind of an equivalent to a supplemental draft? Do you let people bid for him? Do you just leave him on the wire and he's not eligible this year? And then all of those conversations were moot points because he's not going to play this year. So that was funny. I was looking at, I'm sorry to revert back conversationally, but I started looking at other World Cup stuff after we moved on from that. Everyone, some phenomenal games tomorrow. Ivory Coast and Norway will be a lot of fun. It's two really good teams. Erling Haaland, the Norwegian striker, has garnered a good deal of headlines in the United States. He plays for Manchester City. Is just a cool character. Dude looks like if you took a Viking, from the Viking days and put him on a soccer field. That's what you would get. He is an intimidating presence.
He loves the Solomon boiler room.
He seems to love American sports culture, which is fun. So that'll be an awesome game. Mexico got a very tough draw, I think, in having to play Ecuador tomorrow, because that's a really good Ecuador team that has every chance to beat Mexico. And they did things the hard way. I've seen a lot of jokes about them and how their group stage ended up going, because they lost to the Ivory Coast 1-0. They drew with Curacao 0-0, and then they beat Germany 2-1. So they very much did things the hard way to advance. But make no mistake, they've got some world-class players, Piero Hincapié being one of them, who plays for Arsenal, so who I know really well. And that's going to be a phenomenal game. Maggie and I went to TBT El Gallo last week and watched some of the Mexico match outside. And obviously wonderful culture and excitement surrounding El Tri, that national team. So if anyone wants to go find a bar to watch that 9 p.m. game at tomorrow, that should be a really fun one as well.
There we go. Speaking of pulling up a seat next to the TV, we're going to try a segment here. Last week we were touching grass. Now we're watching, we're back on the screens. I'm sorry. We're back on the screens. It's going to be 100 degrees. What are you excited? What have you been watching, or what are you excited to watch? Zach?
You already know. You've teed me up here to talk about. Yeah, no. So I am an enormous Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms person. Anyone in the A Song of Ice and Fire Westeros universe, I very much enjoy all the content. We had episode 2 of House of the Dragon last night. Season 2 was disappointing, mostly because it was incomplete. And I thought season 1 of House of the Dragon was really good, got the show off to a great start. It's about the Targaryen history and the Dance of the Dragons, which is a period in George R.R. Martin's world where a lot of the dragons go extinct because it's a civil war inside the Targaryen house, with different factions warring against each other for control of the Iron Throne. And season 2 was incomplete because there was a writer's strike. And because of financial decisions in the hierarchy of HBO, they cut the season short. It was originally supposed to be 10 episodes, ended up being 8. And so the first 2 episodes of season 3 were really supposed to be the penultimate and episode and season finale of season 2. And so season 2 was disappointing because it didn't feel like it ended on the right note, because it didn't end on the note that it was supposed to. And the first 2 episodes of season 3 have been phenomenal. We had the Battle of the Gullet in episode 1 with some significant deaths, and I won't throw any spoilers out there, but Game of Thrones obviously known for, and it had issues with this in the later seasons of Game of Thrones, the main show, but one of the reasons I loved it is because people didn't have plot armor, because they established very early on that anyone can die at any given time, and so it always felt like there was jeopardy in the narratives for your favorite characters. And you had some of that early on in season 3 with some significant deaths, and the biggest sea battle in Westerosi history, with some dragons burning some ships, which was really cool. And then a momentous episode 2, just with some really beautiful cinematography as well. I believe Claire Kilgore is the name of the director, and she did a phenomenal job with this episode. So yeah, I've been really enjoying it. These are the two episodes that season 2 was supposed to end with, and we would have come away with season 2 feeling very differently, I think, had it done so. Emma Darcy's acting has been phenomenal as the lead Rhaenyra Targaryen in this series. I think they will deserve an Emmy for their performance here in this show. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. And if you have not watched House of the Dragon, it's on HBO, and you should tune in. And I just love dragons. There's a lot of them, and the CGI is really good. Caraxes is my favorite if you're looking for a character to get behind. And it was a great episode, and I've been enjoying it. What about you, Matt? What you been watching?
Well, I'm also going to backtrack just a second to the news. We should acknowledge Terrion Arnold. I'm not going to get too far into it, but that's probably the biggest story of the NFL. Yikes. See,
Yeah, not good.
very serious, very serious. Don't kidnap people. I will say, based on what I've read, it really seems like they've done that a few times, or more than once. It seems like they had a whole system. That's all I'll say. That's
I believe the Lions have cut him, right?
yeah. They cut him right before we hopped on here, so I wanted to make sure we acknowledge that. That's probably
Was
the biggest.
was a 2024 first round pick, right?
Yeah, yeah, and a Lions defense that is not super deep as we've seen the last 2 years. It's, I think injuries to that injuries and just players missing from that defense has been their Achilles heel, I would say. But moving on, yes, so in typical me fashion, this is kind of my MO. Whenever there's a lot of buzz about something, I will block it out and not acknowledge it. And then a year or so later, I will decide to watch it. It took me several months to flip on Stranger Things, if you remember the hype when that first came out. And then I was fully on board. And so Severance, so much hype. I just kind of ignored it for better part of a year. Wife and I finally sat down, cranked them all out. Very good, especially season 1. Season 1 was, I would say, a TV drama at its best. And season 2 was good, not as good. I wanted to see more character development from Helly's Audi. We were hoping that, she would become curious about what her innie did to rile so many people up. Spoilers, by the way. To rile so many people up and maybe become curious and inspired and maybe want to do the same, but she was pretty much plateaued throughout the whole season. I know some people didn't like the finale. Again, Do you care if have you seen this, Zach? Am I spoiling?
I have not seen it, but you can go ahead if it's just, we'll give
I'll try to
listeners a spoiler
vague.
alert.
I'll try to be vague. These are spoilers. If people were upset about the season 2 finale, I don't know what else they were supposed to do. Like if everybody gets out of the building, you don't really have a show. you need some conflict to exist for there to be a third season. So I know people were rooting for everyone to get out together, but where do you go if that happens? So that's kind of what needed to happen, and that did make it predictable in a way, but it's the only thing they could really do without letting the show just go completely off the rails. I'd rather they did that and have a coherent season 3 than try to just blow everyone's mind with season 2 finale and then be like, what did we even do with season 3? There's what can we do that's actually believable? So I have faith in the writers that maybe seasons 2 and 3 will be one complete arc, in the sense that the Wire not the Wire, the Wire did that really well. I thought with seasons 4 and 5, and with seasons 1, 2, and 3, I thought they made those all, and you can even argue 1 through 5 is all one arc. So I do like when TV writers are able to connect multiple seasons. I think that ages a show much better than just cliffhanger, mind blown, every episode. I'd rather a slower burn. And then let me ask you this, Zach. What's been your favorite show of 2026? Do you have one?
Ooh. So this is not the answer to that question, but I will throw in that Maggie finally got me to watch Love Island on Friday. We
Too many
started.
episodes.
Oh my gosh,
There's too many.
it's like 36 episodes in a season, and they're like 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes. I was like, are you kidding? Game of Thrones
Like how
and
how,
House of
how
Dragon
long
is
can I watch these people make out? My God.
yeah, like wow. So I was pretty shocked by that. Although I did enjoy. We started with season 6 of USA, Love Island USA, because we looked at the reviews and everyone said that was like the best season of it.
Was that
So
last
enjoyed
season?
allegedly. I
Yeah.
enjoyed episode 1.
Yeah.
So I don't know how
Wife and
far
I.
we'll.
Yeah. There's a lot of drama. It's entertaining. That's the one. That's the one and only one I've ever watched. It's the only one I will ever watch. It was entertaining. Too many episodes. There's too
Yeah,
many.
yeah. So we liked episode 1 of that, but my favorite show of 2026. That's a great. So one that not one that I've watched this year, but one that came out this year, right?
Sure.
Okay. What do we got? What do we got? Best shows of 2026 so far. What are new ones that have come out this year?
I'll start while you're looking up yours.
Okay.
We really like DTF St. Louis. I know I've been harping on that at the office. And I know it sounds like a raunchy comedy, which it is sometimes, but it's got everything you want or that I want in a TV show. It has, humor, Jason Bateman. If you got those two things, I'm probably on board. And then it's white lotusy, where you have a dead body right out of the gate, and then throughout the season you're trying to figure out how this happened, and and I like that it seems obvious at first, but when you peel back the layers, it's more and more complicated. And that ties into the overall theme of the show, which is connecting with your fellow person. How first impressions, you may or may not like someone at face value, but you kind of peel back the layers and get more and more context about why they are the way they are, and you understand the situation more. And I know it sounds cheesy, but they do it in a way that's really not cheesy. There's one really nice monologue about just again, sounds cheesy, but they pull it off. They have this monologue in the season finale about holding hands. How a simple gesture can make people just feel immediately safe and loved. And it's a kind of a heartwarming show for how many penises that show up on screen.
I found my answers. I would definitely go. So I love fantasy is my favorite genre, and so you'll get a lot of answers like along those lines from me. Star Wars universe, Game of Thrones universe, Lord of the Rings universe, stuff like that. So Maul Shadow Lord was phenomenal. It was the new Star Wars series that released on Disney Plus, and it's a look into Darth Maul, who is now just Maul because he's not a Sith Lord anymore. But it's very gritty. People saw a cartoon and I think assumed that it was like Star Wars Clone Wars type show, geared toward a younger audience. It is not. It is a very adult cartoon, with some really beautiful visual effects. I think they used like watercolor paintings a lot of the time for the backdrop of the cities and the planets that they're on. And so it has this really immersive feel to it that I enjoyed. Some great lightsaber battles, some really good writing and dialogue, and I think blurs the lines between the Sith and the Jedi very well. That where you find yourself rooting for Darth Maul, who is the bad guy a lot of the time, but he's the central character to the show. And so I think it really kind of breaks down the binary moral framework that you see in Star Wars and in fantasy so much of the time, of this good guys versus bad guys. And that's part of why I love Game of Thrones, is because it's not that black and white so much of the time. Good people do bad things, bad people do good things, and you're not sure who to root for sometimes. And so I thought that was an incredibly strong element of Maul Shadow Lord, that your protagonist is kind of an antagonist, and at least that's how they originated in the Star Wars series. So I'd highly recommend Maul Shadow Lord. Also very bingeable, like quick episodes, easy to get through, doesn't drag on, super cool story. And then A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is the other one that has been phenomenal. And on the breakdown that I found, I think that was like the number 2 show to come out in 2026. From a it's an awesome contrast with House of the Dragon, because House of the Dragon is so built around major battles, dragons, these big fantasy spectacles, whereas A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is set, I think it's 100 years into the future. In this world, it's still before Game of Thrones and everything that transpired here, but it's well after House of the Dragon in the timeline, and dragons are extinct at that time. You don't have a major war going on, and so it gets back to a lot of the things that made Game of Thrones great in the first place, which are just simple dialogue and character development, right? And super bingeable. Dexter Soul Ansel is wonderful, as I don't want to give away too much about who his character is because there's a bit of a spoiler there. But he's one of the leads. Dunk and Egg are your primary protagonists, who's a very tall hedge knight named Sir Duncan the Tall, and Egg is his squire, whom Dexter Soul Ansel plays, and they have a wonderful comedic dynamic between the two of them. And I think that a lot of elements of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms harken back to what made Game of Thrones seasons 2 through 5 some of the best television ever, which is just great dialogue, great character development, very raunchy humor. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. So those are the 2 best that I've seen in 2026 so far.
There you have it. You got some TV to watch if you want to crank the AC and get out of the heat this weekend. Tell you what, Zach, we are at an hour now. Why don't we table? We had a tanking discussion that we were going to have, but why don't we table that for next episode, and we'll get into that as well as Bill Barnwell's position rankings, and we can get into that with some fantasy corner. That in the biz is what we like to call a tease. So stick with us. We may or may not pause next week. We want to take care of some administrative work. I might make us an intro so we can be like the other cool podcasts out there.
Yeah, and if you got any intro ideas, go let us know in the comments. Yeah. If you have thoughts on that call in Congo, Uzbekistan.
RTD Sports Podcast at timesdispatch.com. If you got comments on anything that we touched on, especially if you got an idea of how to make the show better. We are still in our very early stages, and we hope to really hit our groove come football season. So, as always, thanks for tuning in. We love having you, and we will be back. Zach, any parting words?
Yeah, 4th of July this weekend, obviously. If you're in the Richmond area, I'll plug a favorite. Be safe. Make sure your pets are in good places too. Obviously, dogs struggle with. I know we both have that we're always trying to manage every 4th of July weekend. With my dog does not love loud noises, and so we're always trying to make sure that they're in a good place for fireworks. But my favorite tradition for the 4th of July in Richmond is going to watch the Dogwood Dell fireworks on the south bank of the James River. You can go to Dogwood Dell, and it's a wonderful festival. But there are a few places along the river that people will congregate on the south bank because it's just a perfect vantage point to watch them over the James River on the opposite bank. Cooper's Island, Nickel Bridge, up in like Forest Hill area, there's a great many spots along there that are gorgeous. So I'm going to some 4th of July parties and stuff, and I'm sure people will be at cookouts, but I already told Maggie that around 6 p.m. I will be peacing out to go to the river and to go find my favorite fireworks spots because I want to be standing knee deep in the James River looking up at the Dogwood Dell fireworks. So that's my plan, and if you're looking for a place to go watch them on the 4th, go snoop around that area, and there are some gorgeous vantage points.
Very good, very good. Well, again, thanks for tuning in the RTD Sports Podcast. We will see you next week, and if not next week, surely the week after. And be safe and have fun out there.
Country roads, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia. Mountain mama, take me home. Country roads.
Goodbye, everybody.